Good evening. This is Martin Comtois with Diana Robinson, the Healer and the Dreamer Astrology channel. We have the video called Protect Yourself Against Psychic Infection. This is for the Mercury Retrograde phase or cycle that's coming December 29, 2022 to January 17, 2023. Here we have a beautiful picture of an alchemical woodcut with the sun and the moon in the two top corners. And then we have the sign of Mercury. So the sign of Mercury, we have the cross of matter. Then the ball, the circle is the sun, and the hat on the sun there is the moon. So Mercury is the priest that supports the union of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. Then we have the deadhead with the circulatia Mercurius, the cycle of Mercury. And then we have some very interesting, we have what looks like one of the three fates, and we have a dead man, and then we have a sage and a businessman, and then on both sides there's these lovely little creature, the tricksters. So welcome everyone. Martin Comtois here, my friend Diana Robinson. How you doing, Diana?
I'm good overall. Yeah.
It's an adventure, isn't it?
Definitely.
So this video is to prepare you for this next cycle of Mercury. By the way, thank you so much, everyone, for celebrating with us this solstice. We've put out some nice videos on the solstice, and then this is just another one of our offerings. We want to thank you for supporting, for subscribing, for hitting the like button, for sharing with your friends. All of those is the massage of the algorithms, and it helps us grow. We're up to 439 subscribers, slowly but surely getting new followers. Thank you so much for supporting us. So here's some of the important dates that we're going to share with you.
Yeah, you put together a really beautiful slideshow here. All of these gorgeous photos.
So the Healer and the Dreamer Astrology, we have Alchemy, Astrology, Dreams, and Jung. Here are the important dates. We have December 13th. So this is right around today, tomorrow, the next day here. That's the beginning of the shadow period. So in your understanding, how's the shadow period? Do we start feeling this this Mercury retrograde already then?
I usually take note of what comes up around the shadow period to sit with during the retrograde.
Basically, from the shadow period on, the Mercury will move through the 8th degree of Capricorn, will go all the way to the 24th, will come back to the 8th and go back to the 24th. So that's the, so anything between the 8th and the 24th degree of Capricorn will get 3 passes of Mercury. And so you want to really pay attention to that. So that starts on the 13th. And then on the 29th itself, right in the middle of the holidays there, Mercury turns retrograde at 24 degrees Capricorn. And then that day right after that, then we have the Mercury-Venus conjunction, which we'll talk about more. That's also at 24. And then we have,
And then about a week into the new year, we have Mercury making its conjunction to the sun. So it's moving backwards and it meets up with the sun, which it won't meet up with again for quite a while. That's going to be at 16 degrees of Capricorn. Another place to take note on your chart. Either 16 degrees Capricorn or 16 degrees of anywhere in the cardinal signs would be something to take note of there too.
Well, any of the signs, the cardinal signs between 8 and 24 will feel this Mercury retrograde, quite actively.
And then on January 17th, Mercury will go direct at 8 degrees of Capricorn, kind of about where it's at right now. And then on February 7th, it'll clear its shadow period, meaning it makes it farther than 24 degrees finally. And then it doesn't catch up to the sun again until 27 degrees Pisces. So that's on March 17th. That's quite a while for the Mercury to be away from the sun. So this will be an interesting retrograde.
So Mercury gets a bit of a bad press, right? When people look at Mercury retrograde as kind of a time of bad luck or a time of not starting anything. What do you see in a Mercury retrograde yourself?
Yeah, it definitely gets a bad rep. I definitely have tried to unbiasedly witness how if you try things I've noticed that have tried to get started just as a new kind of hasty reaction to starting a new idea don't tend to go so far. Usually, that's not to say this rule for everything, but I noticed that the energy, for me at least, my perception is a lot more inward and reflective and cleaning up old ends. So like that whole that gets put on everything, reflect, rewrite, redistribute energy, rethink about how you want to do things. Things are a little bit more into this like reflectionary period, which I think is nice for this time of year. It's going to be a little bit more easeful to be in that reflective period, given that it's winter.
Well, also that it's in an earth sign of Capricorn. You know, Capricorn is about manifesting, about giving form to things, about, you know, becoming who we want and who we want to become, or what we want to shine into the world. And the fact that we're going to have 5 planets in Capricorn leading to Mercury retrograde, it puts a lot of emphasis on what it is that I want to manifest in my life. So then this, you know, this cycle of review, you know, reviewing of intention, reviewing of what it is that I want to leave my mark into the world, what it is that I want to do. So I think that you know, because it's right with the solstice as well, it's going to make it the solstice period, you know, the first few weeks before the solstice and the first few weeks after the solstice, that's the darkest month of the year. So in the darkest month of the year, we have Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, and so then the review mode of our intentions and our need to manifest what it is that we're manifesting. I think that those things together bode well for the year. How do you feel about that?
I feel like there's also this piece where Mercury, it's kind of showed in the first slide, where it kind of unites these two aspects of ourselves. And I feel like whenever you want to move forward with something, getting a common agreement or common value together to be able to move forward more clear and strong with more resilience isn't the word I'm looking for, but it might do, really helps. And so when Mercury can be in alignment or can help parts of you come into alignment, then you can move forward with a lot more clarity. So I appreciate that about the Mercury quality, this feminine masculine union. Beautiful.
Well, Mercury is the guide of soul. Let's look at that picture again. We had a woodcut on the slide. So the woodcut here is of Mercury. No, the next picture, that one. See the Mercury? So then you have Mercury with the caduceus, you know, so Mercury is associated with healing and also as a priest of the divine union. And then we have the signs that Mercury rules. We have Virgo, the Virgin, and then we have the twins fighting together. So any planets you have in Mercury ruled signs will also have a lot to do and with how you process this particular Mercury retrograde. So that's so now let's look at the first chart.
Yeah, as you're on that note with Mercury, I keep thinking and coming back to, as I sit with this, how interesting it is that we have Mercury going retrograde and Mars retrograde, and we're starting our next year with both of those key personal planets retrograde, and Mercury rules Mars in Gemini. Which is, we didn't put it in the dates here, but it's quite neat. The first week and a bit, we'll have both those personal planets retrograde.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is the first chart of the beginning. So this is called station retrograde. Station means that really when a planet goes retrograde and when it turns direct, it stations, it stays, it kind of like moving forward or moving in that direction and slows down and stops and reflects and turns direction. So that's called station retrograde at 24. And then right the day after, it makes a conjunction with Venus. So basically, it's a conjunction with Venus and Mercury. And then we talked about this already in previous videos, that Mercury and Venus have been in conjunction 3 times this fall. And this is the last one. But that conjunction is in the first house, but it's also in conjunction with Pluto.
Oof.
So there's a kind of an ominous way of ending the year, with the Mercury retrograde that starts in conjunction with Pluto and Venus. And we were discussing that really this has been what we've seen for the last three or four winters, is the same alignments in 2020. Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. That was the story in 2021 as well. And so that's a lot of Capricorn planets, and that Pluto was getting ready to go into Aquarius. That's kind of the last. And Pluto in Capricorn means kind of the crumbling of institutions, right? And so it kind of adds a bit of an ominous.
So there could be a crumbling of how we think and how we process things. Would you say maybe?
I think so. I think all of us are really confronted with a lot of difficulties in terms of how we interact with the collective, in our jobs, in our social connections, in our family connections. Pluto, a lot of times is connected with ancestral rage, so around the holiday time, we always experience friction and a confrontation of the ancestral trauma that has been carried by the family and that we carry ourselves. So Mercury and Venus representing the inner functions of our feeling nature and our thinking nature, confronted with that ancestral rage, it really feels that that's kind of what we've all been going through for quite a while, huh?
Yeah.
And then that Mercury Venus Pluto makes angle to Uranus and Saturn and forming that triangle. So really kind of a review of all of that, and that sets the tone for the Mercury retrograde.
I was looking at the Found Expositor of this earlier too, and seeing how Saturn rules a lot of this chart, especially
Saturn
what's
rules
going on
almost
here.
all the whole chart.
It's wild. Ooh. So that's the beginning of the retrograde. And then
well, let's the other feature in the chart is Jupiter moving into Aries. So the end of the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction with Moon and Chiron, and that kind of announces, the main planetary alignment of the spring, which is the Jupiter Chiron conjunction, and the main alignment of the fall, which was Jupiter Neptune. And then with the moon there, so our emotions and really beautiful Jupiter Neptune conjunction with the Chiron, the need to heal, so that kind of also sets the tone, for the transition between the 2022 and into 2023. So that's
with that which we need to heal.
That which needs to heal, and the quest for redemption of the ancestral rage, right? The Jupiter Neptune in sextile to to Pluto, you know, and that's that connection, Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto, and Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto. You know, that is a big factor in what we're all trying to do. It's not that we're just facing the ancestral rage, but we're trying to heal it, and we're trying to redeem it, you know, to kind of spiritualize it, to to turn it into something sacred, you know, to retell the story. So with Mercury, Venus, Pluto, Jupiter, Neptune, Moon, Chiron, with Saturn and Uranus there, that's kind of a lot to reflect on, huh? That's the beginning of our Mercury retrograde.
That is. This is the start. Whew.
Yes. Whew. And then let's look at the picture. This is a very interesting. So Mercury is hermaphroditic. It's the king and the queen together into one. Then there's the red lion in the back, which is also associated with Mercury, and there's the pelican nurturing his two children. And then there's the three-headed snake. And then that 3 with 13 suns there, that's the tree of the sun and the moon. That's the 13 full moons of the year. And then we have the cup with the three-headed snakes, and then we have the single snake. So there's a 3 and the 1. So the 3 and the 1 is what Jung called the axiom of Maria. The 1 plus the 2 make the 3 plus the 1 make the 4 as the 1. So the 3 and the 1 is the unifying principle that makes the 3 into a 4. And this Jung goes into a lot, and that's Mercury's function, is to bring the 3 into a 4. You're going to see the next picture there symbolizes that even more. So you have one of the heads of the demon is the moon, one of the heads is the sun, and then we have Mercury, and when he had the head of the monster, and you can see he has wings on his boots, so that is the alchemical Mercurius. Interesting god, this Mercury, isn't it?
So interesting.
It you know, studying alchemy puts a way different twist on Mercury. You know, when we talk about, you know, in popular astrology, we talk about Mercury as being communication and gathering information. Well, this elevates it to some kind of, you know, well, to the Psychopomp, the guide of souls, the priests and nature spirit, that main duty is to unite the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine.
It's like a true leader.
It's a very, very important archetype, you know, especially in these days of you know, the unity of masculine and feminine. You know, we can see that Mercurius is alive in the unconscious, where we are confronted with the polarity, the bipolarity or the bisexual nature of the soul. And so, you know, that's really quite interesting, that alchemical concept is bubbling out of the unconscious. So this is the chart of January 7th, which is the conjunction of Mercury and the sun. And it's right after the full moon, and Mercury and the sun together, that's the key point of Mercury retrograde. This is when the big aha moment comes together. Then after that, Mercury moves in the back of the sun, and, you know, for another 12 degrees or so. And then we'll turn direct again, and then we'll move back towards the sun. But this is the key moment in the Mercury retrograde. Leading to that moment, things are quite foggy. We're digging for the truth. And then, although it's a difficult time, it is also an insightful time. So that's the conjunction of Mercury and the sun. And then let's look at the next one.
Yeah, is there any other key features in this that you want to speak
Same
to?
as the same same as what we looked in the first chart.
And then here we see some shifting.
Yes, things start to shift, but here is another picture of the same thing. We have the sun and the moon, and then we have the 5 other planets with Mercury in the top, and then we have that hermaphroditic deity again of Mercurius, the ribis, the prima mattera with the dragon, and then we have that 4 and that 3, which is that axiom of Maria again, which is really popular in so that in alchemy, so that really what the function of Mercury is the third that manifests the fourth. And what that means is it's the in an open conflict Jung talks about, there's always a third factor that becomes the uniting factor that makes the conflict come to a resolution. And so then the Mercury retrograde, it brings out the inner conflicts, and the tension between the inner conflicts is so intense, and then it encourages a resolution to that conflict. So how do we put the two conflicting opposites? So in alchemy, it was a fact that the sun and the moon, we were seeking to marry them into a unity, but that marriage is like a conflict. It's a deep tension of opposites. The masculine, the feminine side of our personality is usually in conflict, and how we resolve that conflict is the sacred marriage. And the chief artist in that process is Mercurius. So then, then it really adds a tremendous amount of importance in keeping track of that Mercury retrograde and what it does into your chart and what it triggers, and then how to utilize it to the best of your ability. How does that feel to you? We have
It makes a lot of sense.
we have
same thing.
the sun and the moon. That's the healer and the dreamer symbol. It's the union of the sun and the moon, the healer being the sun and the dreamer being the moon.
How do you feel?
Pretty good, pretty good. I'm really looking forward to this next slide here.
Right.
We have
I feel like we could dive so deep into what you just shared. Thanks for sharing that. It's a lot.
Yes, it is a lot, and I hope that for those of you that are just being introduced to this, that it's not too complex. Feel free to ask questions. But the next slide here. Oh, did we do this one?
We haven't gone over this yet. No.
So when Mercury turns direct, so this is on the 17th, the Sun and Pluto are in exact conjunction, Venus and Saturn in conjunction. And then we have and then Mars also moves direct. So both Mercury and Mars will be turning direct in the beginning of January. And so
midway through,
and that Sun-Pluto conjunction. So then Pluto really holds a really important point in that whole cycle.
Yeah.
But the conclusion of the video is this next slide here that we have for you. And this is protecting yourself against psychic infection. So what do you understand about psychic infection?
Psychic infection. I tend to, I guess, look at psychic infection. Well, how do I say this properly on the interwebs? There's a term I've used a lot lately called amygdala hijacked. And I think of the same thing.
Amygdala hijack.
Yeah.
Ooh, cool.
So the central part of our nervous system, the central part of our brain, they call the amygdala. It's
Okay.
like the gland of the center of the human brain. And it bases its response system on fight or flight response.
Mm-hmm.
And when it forgets to perceive the bigger picture, it goes on fight or flight. It's the,
Right.
like reptilian part of ourself. And I think when it's perceiving fear, even if there's not fear, if it's perceived, we tend to go into fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I feel like it's easy to get in this world. Amygdala hijacked, or why that came up for me is the word you used was psychic infection.
Psychic
So
infection.
if somebody tricks me, or if I allow myself to get tricked, but I'm in a state of fear, then I call that amygdala hijacked. And that's why I don't know, I similarly connect that.
Well, we can also look at the you know, collective psychosis,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or psychic infection, or in you know, in this work that we do, you know, it's really easy to pick up what I call psychic hitchhikers, where you actually start carrying somebody else's baggage.
Mm-hmm.
So then psychic infection, we did a video series called what was that called? Hello. It was on Jung's essay of the undiscovered self. So they're on the video channel there. If you go to the undiscovered self playlist, we have this covered in great detail. It's a 9-video series, about 9 hours worth of material, where we read the undiscovered self, where Jung introduces these concepts of psychic infections and what happens when we become infected by the collective psychosis. And so throughout this crisis that we've been through, leading up to the crisis, we've been talking about this psychic infection and how we are becoming infected by the times. And if you watch too much news, if you watch, you know, it's very easy to start feeling the collective depression. I mean, these are very intense times, and because Mercury and Venus will be in conjunction with Pluto, Sun will be in conjunction with Pluto. We have a Sun-Moon-Pluto conjunction coming up, or anyway, there's a lot going on in our collective, and it's really easy to get infected. So here are some techniques or some pointers in how to protect yourself against psychic infection. First, we have to understand the role of Mercury in the psychic economy. The psychic economy is a word that Jung used. And when we look at astrology and we look at all the planets, they're all part of our psychic economy. Mm-hmm. So what is the role of Mercury in the psychic economy? And that's what makes Mercury retrograde so important, because it helps us connect with that part of our psychic economy. So the psychopomp is a Greek word. So the psychopomp was the deity, Mercury, who took the soul by the hand to go cross the river Styx to go into the place of judgment. So the psychopomp is the guide of soul, you know, like the astrologer sits at the door to hell and wants to take and waits for the person to say, okay, I want to go down there and I want to face my destiny. You know, so the psychopomp, so that's the role of Mercury. He takes you through that river of transformation. He is the guide of souls. Then he is the prima mattera, the Anima Mundi. So the prima mattera and the Anima Mundi, those are words from Latin words from the alchemical discipline. Prima mattera, it's the basic natural elements of transformation. It's the lead that is turned into gold. So Mercury, it's that touchstone that turns lead into the gold. It's the prima mattera, it's the beginning material of the transformation. So having our connection, so we're in the process of healing and transformation, and Mercury is the guide of that transformation. Mercury carries the caduceus. The caduceus is the symbol of healing with the two snakes and the heart. And so the prima mattera and the Anima Mundi. Mercury is the soul of the world. And so understanding, so what does that mean in my own psychic economy? You know, when you have that talk with what we call your conscience, when you have that inner talk, when you're journaling, when you're talking to your, to your angels, you're talking to Mercury. Mercury is the voice of all these archetypes in there. So in protecting yourself against psychic infection, developing a relationship with Mercury is really important. How does that feel?
Yeah, good, important.
So then the next thing is developing a relationship with the archetype. So where is Mercury in your chart? Where is it in your in what sign, in what house? And how does it interrelate with the sun and the moon and the rest of the planets? Getting to know and developing a relationship with that Mercury will do a long way into giving you the information that you need not to get sucked into the vortex of the psychic infection, of the collective psychosis. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Deep, huh?
It is deep. It takes a lot of reflection to kind of work through these patterns within ourselves and then use them for our own benefit versus be daunted or overcome by them.
Right. And so that's the role of Mercury. That's why Mercury retrograde is so important.
Yeah.
Now, the other tool that we have in protecting ourselves against psychic infection is in our dream work, learning to recognize what Jung called the transcendent function. The transcendent function is Mercury taking on different mass to show up in your dreams to guide you towards this union that you're working towards. And so in dreams, learning to recognize the transcendent function, there's so many different examples. Usually in my dreams, he shows up as the bus driver. So that's the transcendent function. There'll be these, sometimes it's an animal, so Mercury is a shapeshifter, and he'll come on in so many different ways. You can show up as a child, you can show up as a snake. All of these pictures that we saw, these are different manifestations, and they will show up in that way, very similar in dreams. So learning to recognize and learning to have a dialogue in your dreams with, and in your journaling with, that archetype. And then we have Mercury and mental and spiritual health, so all of these tools, they help us stay healthy and mentally and spiritually, developing emotional intelligence through being able to be objective about what's going on, and to know that we don't have to get caught up in the madness. We can be the solution to the madness by staying strong in our creative and spiritual practice. Jung called that psychic hygiene, like we brush our teeth, we take our showers. Well, we also need a psychic hygiene. We need to connect with the transcendent function. We need to connect with Mercury. We need to have creative and spiritual practice. And then today we tried to show you the understanding of the cycle of Mercury and what's ahead. Those are all different tools that you have to protect yourself against psychic infection. Whoa, that was quite the download there, huh?
That was.
You want to?
Yeah.
So how did that all feel?
Like a lot?
Like a lot of information,
Yeah.
huh? I think that's something we can review a lot. One of the questions that we have from Anne in Williams Lake is, how are these three phases of a retrograde section? So let's say I have a planet between 8 degrees of Capricorn and 24 degrees of Capricorn. I have my Saturn is at 7 degrees of Capricorn, so
interesting.
close enough, right?
Hmm.
So then the first pass is a coming to awareness. Oh, there's something going on. The second pass, the retrograde pass, is, oh, that's what it's about, and that's what we're going to work on. And then third pass coming back through, that's the integration part.
Mm.
Oh, now these are the things that I need to do. So as we follow this Mercury retrograde, the first pass through the 24 is, oh, that's what's going on. That's, there's something going on. Coming back, oh, wow, I got work to do. And then the integration coming back, it's like, oh, okay, I can move on from this. I learned my lesson. So those are the 3 passes in any transit and retrograde cycle. Well, I was quite excited about this one, but I realized that was a lot, huh? You kind of like, ooh.
No, I try and think about it from also the perspective of the watcher, but let us know if you have questions or things. I think also, I always find it really interesting with astrology to get to look at what's coming, and it always is more enlightening as you look at it. You get ideas or you witness, okay, these things may come up. Be ready to kind of catch the seeds of information or challenges as they come. And then a level of awareness and understanding that comes as you live through these energy frequencies is a completely different medicine. And then putting them together is where I find a lot of magic.
Beautiful, beautiful. Reach out, you guys, if you need some support, and we'll keep coming. The next video we'll do is on the next new moon, the Capricorn new moon, which should be loaded with Capricorn energy. We'll get that out to you soon. Enjoy this video, and thanks for your support.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoy. Be well.
Whoop, 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 whoop.